Hey, you strange miracle, acting around like you're ordinary. Listen closely, the hired experts, but they never thought the first two experts would fail. They were confident when they brought them in. They believed facts, logic, and professional language would be enough. But one by one, things stopped making sense. The investigator reached a point where he could no longer explain what he was seeing. He stepped back, rubbing his forehead, staring at his notes like pieces were missing from a puzzle that should have been complete. The psychologist reviewed the sessions, asked questions, then quietly canceled the follow-up. Something didn't fit, and no amount of analysis could force it to fit. After exhausting every professional who relied on structure and reason, they changed direction. They decided to try something else, something darker, something that didn't depend on proof or data. Bland. They searched for someone who didn't work with facts, someone who claimed to see what others ignored. They brought in a psychic, a man known for never refusing a case. He had worked with criminals, politicians, grieving families, missing persons, and people who insisted they had nothing to hide. He was famous for seeing the things people carried without knowing it. Skeptics didn't like him because his accuracy made them uncomfortable. He was their last option, the final attempt after everything else had failed. And it had failed completely. Lynn's. The moment he entered the room, he didn't bother sitting down. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ease into the session. He looked down at the floor and spoke immediately, his voice calm but heavy. He said that whoever this person was, they were not ordinary. The way he stared at the ground made it seem like even saying the name had drained the air from his chest. He asked for a photograph, an object, anything that had been touched, anything that carried a trace. They handed him a small item and waited. They expected confidence. They expected performance. They expected him to lean forward and begin. But the instant his fingers touched it, he froze. This wasn't a pause meant to build suspense. This was shock. It was like something hit him all at once. The room went quiet as everyone watched him. Then he pulled his hand back sharply, as if the object had burned him. He didn't speak for several long seconds. When he finally did, his voice sounded strained, like he was forcing words through resistance. He asked why they hadn't told him about the connection. No one understood what he meant. They exchanged looks, confused, trying to stay composed. He could tell they weren't being honest. Meow. He leaned back, wiped his hands on his pants, and let out a slow breath. It was clear he wasn't afraid of the person they were asking about. He was afraid of what surrounded that person, afraid of what had shaped them, afraid of what moved with them quietly, unseen by ordinary people. He told them they should have warned him, lowering his voice, as if the room itself might hear. He didn't ask about personality, history, or behavior. None of that mattered. He asked only one thing: what did you do to him? They lied. Not openly, but carefully. They softened the truth. They described themselves as observers, not participants, as concerned, not responsible. But the psychic shook his head slowly. He said what he was feeling didn't match their story. Something here was broken, and it wasn't broken by him. He wasn't supposed to say that. He wasn't supposed to defend the subject. They pushed him, demanded he continue. They needed answers they could control. They needed a story where they weren't the problem. They needed him to confirm that this person was unstable, dangerous, unpredictable. That was the entire reason they brought him in. He tried to continue anyway. He reached for his tools, but nothing worked the way it should. The pendulum didn't swing normally. It stopped, jerked, reversed direction, then hung still, as if something invisible was holding it in place. He tried again with the same result. The tarot cards behaved strangely. Images seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Some cards felt heavier than they should. Some felt cold. He asked them again if they truly understood what they were asking him to step into. They insisted he go on. When he pushed deeper, the room changed. The air felt thick. The temperature dropped slightly. His breathing became shallow. He sat completely still, staring at the cards, then past them, as if he was seeing something layered behind reality. After a long silence, he spoke words they would never forget. He said no human should have this kind of power. The room went silent. That wasn't the answer they wanted, he continued, his voice low and respectful. He said this wasn't normal protection. It was old, very old. Something walked with this person, not like a guardian, but like a witness. A presence that had seen everything they endured. He explained that this person survived things they were not meant to survive, emotionally, physically, and energetically. Parts of them were destroyed, and parts were replaced. What they carry now isn't something a practitioner should try to interpret. He grounded himself with one hand on the table and said that whatever harmed this person didn't win, but it didn't disappear either. It changed him in ways they couldn't understand. They tried to laugh it off, pretending they weren't shaken, but he wasn't paying attention to them anymore. He stared at one specific card for a long time, then quietly put it back, as if he didn't want anyone else to see it. He said that card shouldn't appear that way, not for someone who is still alive. Their laughter faded. He explained that the card represented someone who had already crossed a line most people never approach. Someone who had experienced endings so complete that their mind had rebuilt itself. Someone who doesn't respond, think, or break the way normal people do. You can't break something that has already rebuilt itself. Lend. Then he looked up sharply and asked why they hadn't mentioned the interference. They froze and asked what he meant. He told them it wasn't people. It was something blocking his reading every time he tried to go deeper. Something ancient. Something protective. Something that did not want him there. He admitted he had only encountered energy like this twice before, and both times he walked away. And they refused to stop. Their obsession was stronger than their fear. So he sighed, rubbed his temples, and continued. He drew more cards, his expression changing from confusion to discomfort to dread. He said this wasn't the reading of an ordinary person. This was someone who had died without dying. Someone who had walked out of emotional graves. Someone who stood inside destruction and did not collapse. The strength this person carries doesn't come from practice or belief. It comes from surviving something that should have erased them. Then he paused again. He narrowed his eyes and said what unsettled him most was that this person wasn't blocking the reading at all. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't defending. He was simply there. And even after everything he had already seen, the psychic admitted there was still something he could not access. He said parts of this person were hidden, not by choice, but by something that refused to let certain layers be touched. That answer immediately frustrated them. They argued that it made no sense. How could someone hide anything if they didn't even know this was happening? The psychic responded calmly, almost patiently. He explained that awareness was not required. The body knows. The subconscious knows. Energy knows. Some people develop defenses that work independently of thought. This person was one of them. Over time, he had been watched, tested, misunderstood, and pushed. Somewhere along that path, something intervened. Something began standing between him and anyone trying to reach inside. And then the psychic said the words that shifted the room. He said This person was protected by something ancient. Pleians. They were not ready for that explanation, and they were even less prepared for the tone he used when he said it. There was no fear in his voice, only respect. He looked at the energy like someone examining the aftermath of a long war, not something chosen, but something endured. He said this kind of protection doesn't come from belief or request. It comes from survival. It forms when someone is pushed beyond what the human mind is designed to withstand. He drew another card, and his hand shook as he looked at it. He said quietly that it confirmed everything. When they asked what it confirmed, he told them they were not dealing with someone they could pressure or control. This was someone who had already lived through collapse and rebuilt without guidance. Someone who learned how to exist without needing approval, reassurance, or permission. Lend. He pressed his fingers against his forehead as if trying to steady himself. He explained that this person does not break the way most people do because they already broke once, completely. When they put themselves back together, they became difficult to read. Patterns didn't apply. Weak points no longer showed up the way others expected. When they tried to argue, he stopped them. He told them plainly that they would not find weakness here. The only vulnerability this person ever had was trust, and that trust had already been damaged and out. His eyes stayed locked on theirs as he said it. This person had been hurt by someone they cared about deeply, and that experience rewired them. Their emotions reorganized. Their instincts sharpened. Their boundaries became firm. Now, anyone trying to enter their inner space meets resistance they don't know how to explain. Bond. The psychic admitted that even he could not see past it. And more importantly, he wasn't sure he should try. That only made them push harder. They offered more money, more pressure, more reasons. Their need for validation outweighed their caution. They wanted proof that their behavior was justified, proof that watching, studying, and discussing this person behind closed doors was necessary. They needed him to be wrong. They needed themselves to be right. Eventually, the psychic gave in with visible reluctance. He agreed to pull one more card. He handled the deck slowly, carefully, like someone approaching something that could react. He shuffled, hesitated, then drew. The moment he saw it, his expression changed completely. He said nothing for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. He said if he continued, he would not sleep that night. They asked what he saw. He shook his head and told them that this person had already stepped into the next phase of their path. He told them to stop whatever they thought they were doing. He said they were not investigating a person anymore. They were interfering with a direction already in motion. When they asked what that meant, he told them simply that the more they tried to understand him, the more they revealed themselves. Then he stood up, gathered his tools, and said he was finished. He ignored their demands for explanation and walked toward the door. As he left, one sentence slipped out, quiet but unmistakable. He said they were not prepared for what this person would become next. That sentence didn't fade when he left. It lingered in the room, heavy and unsettling. They stood there trying to dismiss it, trying to convince themselves he was exaggerating. But his expression told them. There was no panic in his eyes, only caution. Not for the person they were focused on, but for themselves. It was as if he knew that once the next layer unlocked, nothing around this person would remain unchanged. Watching him walk away without explanation frightened them more than the reading itself. People like him usually talk endlessly. This one chose silence. He didn't run, but he moved faster than before, like someone instinctively creating distance. Bland. When they returned inside, they paced and whispered, arguing in low voices. They weren't afraid of power yet. They were afraid of the unknown part of it, the part that wasn't visible. The part the person himself didn't show, didn't weaponize, didn't even acknowledge openly. While they unraveled, he remained exactly as he always was, calm, still, observing. Their reactions exposed them more than any reading ever could. His presence had a way of pulling truth out of people without effort. He didn't try to uncover them. They uncovered themselves trying to understand him. One of them finally asked why the psychic couldn't read him. Another answered quietly that he had read him. He just couldn't handle it. That realization shifted everything. The question was no longer about this person's energy. It was about the psychic's limits. If someone trained to face the unseen couldn't hold what he encountered, what chance did they have? When they looked at him again, their expressions had changed. There was no judgment left, only caution, and something close to respect. The shift had already begun. It was subtle and silent, almost impossible to detect unless you knew what to look for. The air felt different, not warmer in temperature, but charged, like something activating. He didn't push anything outward. He didn't react. But something around him adjusted, aligning itself naturally. They felt it before they understood it and stepped back without realizing why. Most people expect power to announce itself loudly, through emotion or chaos. His never did. It showed itself through stillness. Lums, the psychic, had tried to trace his energy the way he always did. But the moment he reached too far, something responded. Not aggressively, not defensively, with authority. That was when he stopped. He realized this energy wasn't passive, waiting to be interpreted. It was aware, observing. The others didn't know the details, but they felt what was left behind. Something deep, something ancient. Not ancient in age, but in presence, like oceans or mountains. When the psychic said no human should have this kind of power, he wasn't condemning it. He was acknowledging it. He said those words because he couldn't place you anywhere in his understanding. There was no category for you in his experience, no frame of reference that could hold what he brushed against. Everything he had learned, everything he trusted in his work, stopped making sense the moment he touched the edge of what stands with you. That was what frightened him. Not you as a person, but what exists behind you, what responds when someone crosses too far. After he left, the group tried to steady themselves, breathing slowly, forcing calm back into their bodies. One of them finally asked if you had known about it. You tilted your head slightly, offering neither confirmation nor denial. You have never explained the parts of yourself. People are not ready to understand. You've learned that real strength does not announce itself. It waits quietly, observant, until someone presses against the wrong line. They kept asking questions that didn't really matter. They wanted timelines, explanations, origins. They asked who taught you, how long it had been there, what triggered it. But they weren't asking out of curiosity. They were asking because uncertainty unsettles people. They needed your strength to feel manageable, predictable, something they could place inside a story. What they didn't understand was that your strength never needed approval. It didn't come from belief or instruction. It didn't arrive with guidance or rules. It simply exists. All you said was that he shouldn't have tried to go that far. That single sentence ended every conversation in the room. They didn't fully understand it, but they understood enough. Blanchett, you are not dangerous because you threaten anyone. You are dangerous because crossing your boundaries activates something that doesn't negotiate, something you don't command, something that responds on its own. Someone repeated what the psychic muttered as he left, that you were protected by something ancient. They spoke it quietly, as if volume itself might attract attention. They tried to explain it in familiar terms, imagining guardians, rituals, or symbols. but they were wrong. What surrounds you is not borrowed. It doesn't guard you from a distance. It recognizes you. It moves with you. It aligns rather than protects. They didn't have language for that difference, but they could feel it. Can't. They talked over each other, throwing out ideas that didn't fit. Some called it ancestral, some spiritual, some something beyond space or time. None of it described you. You are not someone who fits inside labels. You are someone who causes labels to fall apart. When their energy became frantic, you stepped away, not to avoid them, but to let the room settle. Fear has a way of tightening spaces, pulling everything inward. Your presence does the opposite. You moved into quieter air, and they watched without interrupting, without pushing, without demanding answers. For the first time, they understood that explanations would not be given. They thought they were studying you. They didn't realize you were quietly observing them. While they focused on what the psychic had seen, you were aware of what he couldn't reach. He saw the outer edge. He encountered the boundary. He did not touch the source. That was why he stopped. That was why he warned them. What you are becoming is not something that can be predicted or charted. It is already happening. While they spiraled in thought, you remained steady. Not because you were unaffected, but because you have always lived with instincts that others don't possess. You have always sensed a presence that watches, guides, and intervenes only when necessary. It doesn't act without cause. It doesn't announce itself. But the moment someone steps where they don't belong, it responds. Plem the psychic never received permission to go further. So the connection closed. The people left behind were forced to confront something their understanding wasn't built for. They replayed his hesitation, his silence, his refusal. They tried to reason their way through something that doesn't respond to logic. The truth was simple. Your energy does not behave the way most human energy does. It doesn't fluctuate wildly. It doesn't fracture under pressure. It holds, and anything that tries to intrude meets the presence that walks with you. You leaned against the wall, breathing evenly, outwardly unchanged, but inwardly, something opened, not violently, not destructively. It felt expansive, like a door unlocking, like a long dormant memory recognizing itself. You didn't call it forward. You didn't try to activate anything. It emerged on its own when someone pushed too far. The psychic triggered something he didn't understand. You awakened something you weren't consciously reaching for. They watched you, waiting for reassurance, for words that would restore their comfort. But you were never meant to make them feel safe. You were never meant to explain yourself. You were never meant to shrink so others could relax. His warning replayed in their minds again and again. They weren't prepared for what you become next. Slowly, they realized he wasn't speaking about the future. He was describing the present. What you become isn't something you grow into. It's something you uncover. Something that has always been there, waiting quietly, waiting for calm to be mistaken for weakness, waiting for someone to cross a line they shouldn't. When you finally lifted your gaze and met theirs, the room fell silent. You didn't need to say anything. They were no longer looking at the version of you they thought they understood. They were facing the version the psychic sensed but couldn't handle. The version that remembers. The version that doesn't hide. The version stepping forward regardless of who is ready. No? And in that moment, they understood one last thing. The psychic didn't leave because he was afraid. He left because he recognized what they couldn't. Whatever walks with you is no longer dormant. It has awakened. That realization didn't echo in the room. It settled deep inside them. They looked at you without judgment, without certainty, without language. Some things cannot be named. Meliad. What they were sensing was something that didn't follow familiar rules, something that quietly forced the mind to stretch beyond what it was used to holding. Without realizing it, their breathing slowed, their voices softened, their posture changed, because you threatened them, but because something around you settled into a kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. You didn't glow or shake or display anything unusual. You simply stood there, and somehow that was enough to anchor the entire space. The air felt heavier, as if sound moved differently now. Their instincts reacted. Some felt the urge to apologize even though you hadn't asked for it. Some felt the urge to leave, even though you hadn't moved toward them. Some felt an impulse to lower themselves, not because you demanded anything, but because the presence they felt wasn't about dominance. It was about recognition. They slowly realized they weren't standing near something violent or unstable. They were standing near something aligned so closely with truth that falsehood couldn't survive near it. When you took a single step forward, natural and unforced, the room reacted as if that movement had shifted the balance of everything inside it. What they didn't notice was how composed you were. You weren't overwhelmed or confused. You weren't struggling to contain anything. You were calm, centered, and fully aware. What was happening wasn't chaotic. It was precise. It unfolded the way something does when it has waited a long time for the right moment, not rushing, not exploding, simply stretching into place. Band. Eventually, someone asked if it was dangerous. You looked at them the same way the psychic had looked at you earlier, with understanding rather than fear. You answered simply that it only becomes dangerous when someone tries to step into places they don't belong. That was when the final realization settled in. The psychic hadn't seen something harmful inside you. He had sensed something protective around, and that kind of protection made people uncomfortable because they aren't taught how to accept it. Strength makes sense to them, intuition makes sense, but protection that reacts before you even become aware of a threat is something else entirely. They asked whether it had awakened because of the psychic. You told them no. It awakened because he forced entry. That sentence landed heavily. They understood then that he hadn't just been reading your energy. He had pushed beyond conscious layers into places that even you approach with care. Whatever stands watch over those spaces responded instantly. It didn't ask permission. It didn't wait for processing or approval. It simply acted. That was why the psychic stopped. He hadn't misunderstood you. He had crossed a boundary, and what answered him was something he was never prepared to face. Plans. They remembered the look in his eyes as he backed away. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. The kind that doesn't need explanation. A knowing that whatever stands with you doesn't entertain curiosity. It responds only to intention. Slowly, their confusion changed into understanding. Their fear shifted into something more complex: respect, unease, awareness. They no longer saw you as someone dangerous. They saw you as something rare, someone who moves with protection that existed long before human certainty, something that doesn't just shield but evaluates intent before allowing proximity. When you spoke again, your voice was steady. You said he wasn't wrong to try, but he was wrong to push. They listened closely because they could feel the difference in your words. You weren't theorizing or dramatizing. You were speaking from experience, the kind people rarely talk about because it's often misunderstood. You explained that nothing external awakened. What woke up was recognition. You've always sensed something around you. Not loudly, not constantly, but reliably. People leaving your life before they caused harm. Situations dissolving before turning dangerous. Sudden instincts telling you to stop, move, wait, or leave without logical explanation. Those weren't coincidences. That wasn't imagination. That was protection. Now that it was fully active, it was no longer subtle. You felt it like a steady pressure, like a presence positioned just behind you, aware and attentive. It wasn't aggressive or violent. It was alert, always alert. When they asked what happens next, you answered without hesitation. Nothing changes for you. Everything changes for anyone who tries to cross a boundary. They understood you weren't exaggerating. They had already seen evidence. A man trained to work with unseen forces had walked away, silent and humbled, not harmed, just aware of his limits. From that point on, they stopped trying to analyze you. They stopped projecting ideas onto you. Instead, they began revisiting everything they had misunderstood in the past. The times they dismissed your instincts, the times they underestimated your awareness, the moments they labeled your caution as overthinking. Now they saw it clearly. Your energy was never unstable. It was exact. It moved with intention. As you stepped further into the room, they followed your movements with attention that wasn't intrusive, but careful. They listened. They didn't interrupt. And in that silence, their understanding settled. You weren't someone who possessed power. You were someone aligned with it. Not something you carried, summoned, or activated. It was part of your structure. In your timing, your restraint, your awareness, the quiet before your reactions, the precision behind your decisions. When the psychic said no human should have this power, he wasn't condemning it. He was acknowledging that it didn't fit inside normal definitions. You had always felt out of place in environments that demanded smallness. You had always sensed something guiding your steps, pulling you away from certain paths and toward others. Now, they could see it too. Land. You walked toward the window, not to escape the moment, but to ground yourself in it. You felt heavier in the way mountains feel heavy, in the way oceans feel heavy. Solid. Real. Behind you, that presence stood quietly, not imposing, not dramatic, simply there, fully aligned. When someone asked what happens to people who try to hurt you now, you didn't turn around. You said nothing you do. Something else steps in before they ever get close. They understood it wasn't a threat. It was a fact woven into who you are. The room grew still again, not from fear, but from acceptance. They finally understood the truth the psychic grasped instantly. He didn't fail. He reached for something that was never meant to be handled. And when it responded, he recognized it. You don't move according to ordinary rules. You walk with something ancient, alert, and awake. Something that recognizes danger before it forms. Something that has taken its place beside you. And the truth that settled into them was simple and unshakable. You were never alone, and you never will be.